Meanwhile, Michael launched his counterattack. His lawyer filed motions contesting everything: the frozen accounts, my temporary custody arrangement, even my continued use of the house. He submitted affidavits from colleagues testifying to his character and parenting potential. He offered a settlement that would give me the house, but significantly reduce support, contingent on my dropping the vindictive campaign to alienate him from his daughter. Most disturbingly, he began laying groundwork to question my mental stability, citing my extreme emotional reactions and paranoid accusations as evidence that I might be suffering from postpartum psychosis and could potentially pose a danger to Lily. "It's a common tactic," Janet reassured me during our prep session for the hearing. "When facts aren't on their side, they attack the opposing party's mental health. But we've anticipated this. Dr. Reynolds will testify that she's evaluated you thoroughly and found no evidence of any concerning psychiatric conditions, just the normal distress any person would experience under these circumstances." The evaluation with Dr. Reynolds, a psychiatrist specializing in postpartum mental health, had been Janet's idea. "Document your stability," she'd advised. "Create a record showing you're proactively monitoring your mental health while dealing with extraordinary stress." Those sessions became lifelines as the hearing approached. Dr. Reynolds didn't just evaluate me. She provided coping strategies for the overwhelming emotions threatening to derail me. Techniques to ground myself when panic struck. Permission to feel the rage and grief without letting them consume me. Validation that my reactions were proportionate to the betrayal I'd experienced. "Time is both your enemy and your ally right now," she told me during our third session. "Your enemy because each day in this limbo state compounds your trauma. Your ally because with each day that passes, you're proving your resilience, your capability as Lily's mother, despite overwhelming personal distress." "I'm afraid of what happens at the hearing," I confessed. "What if I fall apart on the stand? What if I can't face them both in the same room?" "Then you fall apart, and we put you back together," she said simply. "But I don't think you will. The fact that you're worried about it shows your self-awareness, your commitment to staying strong for your daughter. Those are signs of health, not instability." As the hearing date approached, Martha and George proved invaluable not just emotionally, but practically. They cared for Lily during my legal meetings and therapy appointments. They fielded calls from concerned friends and family members as news of the separation spread. They created a buffer between me and the outside world when I needed to focus on healing. Most surprisingly, they gathered evidence against their own son. George provided documentation of funds Michael had borrowed from them over the years. Money ostensibly for home improvements that may have actually funded his separate life with Caroline. Martha discovered photographs on their family cloud account showing Michael and Caroline together at times when he was supposedly on business trips. "How can you do this?" I asked George one evening. "He's your son." "Because it's right," he answered simply. "And because Michael needs to face consequences if he's ever going to become the man we raised him to be. Real love sometimes means allowing difficult lessons." The night before the hearing, I sat in Lily's nursery, watching her sleep. 6 weeks old now, she was beginning to show glimpses of personality. Her serious expression when encountering something new. Her early attempts at smiles. The way she turned toward familiar voices. My voice. Martha's. George's. Not Michael's. He had seen her only during 2 supervised visits since moving out, both awkward and brief. Whatever happened in court the next day would shape her life as much as mine. The stakes couldn't be higher, the pressure more intense. Yet looking at her perfect face, I felt a clarity I'd been missing during weeks of emotional turbulence. Time was indeed running out, not just for resolving the legal matters before my mental health collapsed under the strain, but for Michael and Caroline's attempts to control the narrative. Tomorrow, everything would be spoken aloud in a public courtroom. Their betrayal, their plans, their manipulation. No more secrets, no more gaslighting, no more pretending. For the first time since that text message appeared on my hospital bed, I felt ready to face whatever came next. The hearing and beyond. The family court was smaller than I'd imagined, the wooden benches well-worn, the judge's expression inscrutable as she reviewed the thick file of our case. Michael sat with his attorney at one table, studiously avoiding my gaze. I sat with Janet at the other, George and Martha directly behind me in the gallery. Caroline was notably absent, a strategic decision by Michael's team, Janet suspected, to avoid inflaming the judge's sentiments. What I remember most about that day isn't the legal arguments or the evidence presented. It's the moment Michael finally looked at me during his testimony. Really looked at me, and I saw not the contrition or shame I'd expected, but naked calculation. He was performing. The devoted father devastated by separation from his child, the husband concerned about his wife's emotional state, the reasonable man seeking only fairness despite difficult circumstances. It was the same expression he'd worn when convincing me to combine our finances 3 years earlier, when suggesting I take the full 12 weeks of maternity leave despite the financial strain, when assuring me that his frequent work trips were building our future. In that moment, I finally understood. I had never really known this man at all. Judge Watkins seemed to reach a similar conclusion. After hearing testimony from both sides, including powerful statements from Martha and George about Michael's deception, she issued temporary orders that exceeded even Janet's optimistic projections. Continued exclusive use of our home for Lily and me. Temporary support at the high end of state guidelines. Primary physical custody with limited supervised visitation for Michael. Appointment of a forensic accountant to trace all funds Michael had moved during the pregnancy. Expedited discovery timeline for final hearing. The court is troubled by the respondent's pattern of calculated financial maneuvers during a period of particular vulnerability for the petitioner, Judge Watkins stated. While infidelity itself is not a factor in division of assets in this state, systematic concealment and removal of marital funds is. Michael's face darkened with each pronouncement. By the time the judge concluded the hearing, he was visibly seething, the careful performance abandoned. "This isn't over," he hissed as we passed in the corridor afterward. "Actually," Janet replied before I could speak, "it's proceeding exactly as it should. I suggest you advise your client that further threats will be noted in our next filing." Outside the courthouse, standing in the bright September sunshine with Martha's arm around my shoulders, I felt something unexpected. Hope. Not that Michael and I would reconcile. That door was permanently closed. Not even that the pain of betrayal would soon fade. I knew better than to expect quick healing from such a profound wound. No, it was hope that justice existed. That systems designed to protect the vulnerable sometimes actually did so. That my daughter and I wouldn't be casualties of Michael and Caroline's selfishness. That evening, as I rocked Lily to sleep, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. A photo appeared. Michael and Caroline sitting close together at what appeared to be an airport gate. "Thought you should know they're planning to violate the court order. Flight to Mexico leaves in an hour. Didn't seem right after everything." Michael's assistant, Jen, I called Janet immediately. Within 30 minutes, police officers were dispatched to the airport. Michael and Caroline were intercepted at the gate, not fleeing permanently as we'd feared, but taking what Michael later claimed was a stress relief weekend that he forgot to clear with the visitation supervisor. The incident added contempt of court to Michael's growing list of legal problems and eliminated any remaining sympathy the judge might have harbored for his position. 3 months later, our divorce was finalized under terms that secured Lily's future financially and protected her from the chaos of her father's choices. Michael accepted a transfer to his company's West Coast office, alone, after Caroline reportedly ended things when the reality of court battles and public scandal proved less romantic than forbidden trysts. His parents remained in my life, devoted grandparents to Lily despite the painful division in their family. Martha and George's unwavering support became my lifeline as I navigated the treacherous waters of single motherhood and emotional recovery. 1 year later, the viral truth. They say time heals all wounds. I'm not sure I believe that anymore, but I can attest that time certainly changes them, transforming sharp, breathtaking pain into something more manageable. A dull ache that occasionally flares when triggered by memories or milestones. Lily's first birthday approached faster than I could have imagined. One moment, I was counting her age in weeks, measuring her growth against tiny milestone charts. The next, I was planning a birthday celebration for my walking, babbling 1-year-old who bore an uncanny resemblance to her paternal grandmother. "She has your determination," Martha remarked one evening as we watched Lily attempt for the 20th time to stack blocks higher than her previous record. That focus, that refusal to quit. I needed every ounce of that determination this year, I admitted, leaning against her shoulder. Our relationship had evolved from in-laws to something closer to mother and daughter, strengthened by shared trauma and purpose. What I didn't tell Martha was how close I'd come to breaking. How many nights I'd lain awake, replaying every moment of my marriage, searching for clues I'd missed. How sometimes, in my darkest hours, I wondered if something fundamental was wrong with me, something that had driven both my husband and sister to betray me so completely. Dr. Reynolds called it trauma cycling, the endless loop of self-doubt and retrospection that kept me tethered to the past. Our sessions had decreased from weekly to monthly, but I still relied on the techniques she'd taught me to interrupt those cycles before they consumed me. The divorce had been finalized for 9 months. Michael sent his support payments on time, but had attended only 3 of his scheduled visitations with Lily, always seeming uncomfortable and distracted during the supervised hours. Caroline had made multiple attempts at reconciliation. Tearful voicemails, lengthy emails explaining her side, even an unexpected visit on Christmas Eve that ended with George firmly escorting her from the property. I had responded to none of it. My energy was reserved for healing, for Lily, for rebuilding a life that no longer revolved around betrayal. Then came the TikTok that changed everything. It appeared in my feed on a Tuesday afternoon while Lily napped, a young woman, perhaps in her early 20s, staring earnestly into the camera. Dating red flags, the married man edition. #time is running. #toxic relationships. Dating horror stories. I nearly scrolled past it, but something in her expression made me pause. "So he told me he was separated, right? Getting divorced because his wife was emotionally unavailable during her pregnancy." Classic line. The woman rolled her eyes dramatically. 6 months we dated while he was finalizing things. Then his mother calls me and asks why I'm dating her married son whose wife just had their baby. My heart began racing as the story continued. Turns out, this man was seeing not just me, but his wife's sister simultaneously. Can you believe this? And when his wife found out, while in labor no less, he tried to convince everyone she was having a postpartum mental breakdown. By the video's end, I was shaking. The details were too specific, the timeline too exact. The comments section confirmed my suspicions. "Wait, is this Michael Evans from Indianapolis? Because I heard about this from my cousin who works at his company." "The sister works in publishing, right? Caroline something?" "His ex-wife deserves a medal for surviving this and taking him to the cleaners in court." The video had over 3 million views and was gaining traction by the minute. At Michael Evans. His trash was already trending in certain circles. My phone rang. Janet. "I assume you've seen it," she said without preamble. "We need to talk strategy." She's named him in the comments, which opens potential liability issues for her. But more importantly, this changes public perception dynamics for any future custody battles. "Who is she?" I managed to ask. "Apparently, someone he was seeing simultaneously with Caroline. She claims they met on a business trip to Denver last February. There are others commenting now with similar stories." Others. The word landed like a stone in my stomach. Not just Caroline. Not just this anonymous TikTok woman. Others. "What do I do?" I whispered. "Nothing," Janet said firmly. "Absolutely nothing publicly. Let this play out without your fingerprints anywhere near it. But privately, document everything. Every comment, every follow-up video. This could be crucial if Michael ever attempts to revisit custody arrangements." By evening, the story had exploded across multiple platforms. Michael's carefully constructed professional image was in tatters. 2 women from his company had come forward with their own accounts of inappropriate relationships. Caroline's publishing house was trending for all the wrong reasons, with readers threatening boycotts of authors under her editorial supervision. And then my phone lit up with a text from a number I'd deleted but still recognized instantly. "We need to talk. My life is being destroyed by lies. Please, Becca. For Lily's sake." The ticking clock. Michael's desperation grew as his carefully constructed new life imploded in real time on social media. What began as one TikTok had evolved into a full-blown #Me Too moment within his industry, with multiple women sharing similar stories of manipulation, gaslighting, and infidelity. "He's made his bed," George said grimly when I showed him the increasingly frantic messages Michael was sending. "Now he gets to lie in it." But beneath my justified sense of vindication lurked something darker. A creeping anxiety that threatened to overwhelm me, just as I'd begun to heal. Every notification, every new revelation, every message from Michael dragged me back into the trauma I'd worked so hard to process. "I'm afraid of sliding backward," I confessed to Dr. Reynolds during an emergency session. "Just when I thought I was finding my footing, this public spectacle is forcing me to relive everything. I can't eat, can't sleep. I'm having panic attacks for the first time in months." She nodded, understanding immediately. "The clock is ticking on your recovery, Rebecca. Prolonged re-exposure to trauma can undo months of healing work. We need to implement stronger boundaries immediately." Those boundaries included a court-approved communication app that filtered all messages from Michael through my attorney first, a temporary deactivation of my social media accounts, and most importantly, a firm decision not to engage with the viral story in any way. "Your silence speaks volumes," Dr. Reynolds assured me. "It communicates dignity and focus on your daughter rather than revenge." Still, maintaining that silence proved increasingly difficult as the scandal expanded. Caroline finally broke her public silence with a tearful Instagram video, positioning herself as another of Michael's victims, manipulated and lied to, never knowing the full extent of his deceptions. "I betrayed my sister in the worst possible way," she admitted, mascara tracking down her cheeks. "I will regret that until my dying day. But I was just one in a long line of women Michael Evans deceived, and I'm speaking out now so there won't be more victims." The calculated attempt to rehabilitate her image by joining the chorus against Michael might have worked if not for the receipts, literal and figurative, that other women in the comments section quickly provided. Screenshots of romantic messages exchanged during my pregnancy. Photos of them together at times when she claimed to have been unaware of his true nature. Janet called with updates daily as we weathered the storm from behind my digital fortress. Michael's been placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation, she reported 2 weeks into the scandal. His attorney has reached out about revisiting the divorce settlement. Apparently, his financial situation has changed dramatically. Let me guess, I said dryly. He wants to reduce child support. Actually, no. He wants to sign over full legal custody in exchange for a confidentiality agreement from you. He seems to think you're behind the viral exposure. The irony would have been laughable if it weren't so infuriating. I've been silent through this entire circus. I know, Janet assured me. But it's easier for him to blame you than accept that his own actions have created this situation. The question is, do we engage with this offer? I considered it carefully. Full legal custody would mean no more battles over decisions regarding Lily's education, healthcare, or upbringing. No requirement to consult Michael on important matters. Greater protection against his potential influence as she grew. What would the confidentiality agreement restrict? I asked. Essentially, you would be barred from publicly discussing your marriage, the affair, the divorce, anything that could further damage his reputation. But I haven't been discussing those things publicly anyway. Correct. Which is why this is a surprisingly favorable offer from your perspective. You get something valuable in exchange for continuing to do exactly what you're already doing. The decision seemed obvious, yet something held me back. Not sympathy for Michael. He'd forfeited any claim to that long ago. Rather, a growing awareness that this public reckoning, painful as it was to witness, represented a form of justice beyond what legal proceedings alone could provide. I need time to think, I told Janet. That night, after putting Lily to bed, I sat on my back porch with Martha, watching fireflies emerge in the summer twilight. Michael called us, she said quietly. First time in months. What did he want? To blame everyone but himself, mostly. She sighed heavily. He wanted us to reach out to you, convince you to call off the online attack. And what did you tell him? The truth. That you've maintained absolute dignity through this entire ordeal. That whatever is happening now is simply the natural consequence of his choices. She reached for my hand. We also told him he needs professional help, that this pattern will continue destroying his life until he addresses the root causes. Do you think he will? Get help? Martha's expression was sad but resolute. I don't know. George and I have had to accept that we can love our son unconditionally without enabling his behavior. That's been the hardest lesson of this entire experience. Her words crystallized something I'd been struggling to articulate even to myself. Throughout this journey, from the moment I discovered the affair to the current viral fallout, I'd been reacting to circumstances beyond my control, making the best of situations I never chose, surviving. Perhaps it was time to do more than survive, to actively shape what came next rather than simply responding to Michael's latest crisis. I'm not going to take his deal, I decided aloud. Not because I intend to speak publicly, but because I refuse to let him dictate the terms of my silence. My discretion isn't his to purchase. It's a choice I make independently, for Lily's sake and my own. Martha squeezed my hand. Time is revealing who everyone truly is, Rebecca. And you should be very proud of who you're showing yourself to be. The healing truth. As suddenly as it had erupted, the viral storm surrounding Michael and Caroline began to subside, replaced by newer scandals, fresher outrage. The internet's collective attention moved on, though the professional and personal consequences for both remained significant. Michael eventually relocated to Seattle, accepting a substantially reduced position within a smaller company. Caroline left publishing entirely, moving to Colorado to reconnect with her authentic self, according to her parting Instagram post. Their relationship, whatever it had been, did not survive the public scrutiny. In their absence, I found myself facing an unexpected challenge, defining my identity beyond betrayed wife and single mother. Those roles had consumed me so completely that I'd lost sight of who Rebecca Evans was beneath the trauma and responsibility. "This is actually a positive crisis," Dr. Reynolds assured me during what we'd decided would be our final regular session. "It means you've processed enough of the acute trauma to make space for fundamental questions about identity and purpose." "I feel selfish even thinking about it," I admitted. "Lily needs so much of me." "Lily needs a mother who is whole and fulfilled, not just functional," she countered. "Children thrive when they see their parents thriving." Those words became my mantra as I cautiously began rebuilding aspects of my life that had nothing to do with Michael's betrayal or my daughter's immediate needs. I accepted a part-time position with my former employer, working remotely while Lily attended a morning preschool program 3 days a week. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected during the marriage and its dramatic dissolution. Most significantly, I started writing, first as therapy, then as something more. The journal entries chronicling my journey from devastation to recovery evolved into essays exploring resilience, parenthood, and the reconstruction of trust after profound betrayal. When Martha discovered my writing, she encouraged me to submit an anonymous piece to an online publication focused on women's experiences. To my shock, they not only accepted it, but requested a regular column. "You have a voice that resonates," the editor wrote. "So many women have lived some version of this story but lack the words to process it. Your perspective helps them find their own." Under a pseudonym, I began sharing carefully anonymized versions of my experience and recovery process. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of comments and messages from women and some men who saw their own pain reflected in my words, who found hope in my gradual healing. For the first time since discovering that text message in the delivery room, I felt something beyond survival or coping. I felt purpose. On Lily's 2nd birthday, a joyful celebration attended by Martha, George, and a handful of close friends, I received an unexpected delivery, a small package containing a handwritten letter and a check. The letter was from Michael. "Rebecca, words cannot adequately express the depth of my regret for the pain I've caused you and Lily. No apology could ever be sufficient, so I won't insult you by offering one. Instead, I want you to know that I've spent the past 8 months in intensive therapy, confronting the narcissism and entitlement that led me to betray the most important relationships in my life. I've enclosed a check representing the bonus I received at my new position. It's not part of our legal agreement. It's simply money that should go toward Lily's future. No strings attached. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect reconciliation of any kind. I'm writing only to acknowledge that you deserved none of what happened, that my attempts to blame you or question your stability were despicable projections of my own failings, and that your dignity throughout has stood in stark contrast to my cowardice. The courts have formalized our arrangements regarding Lily, but I wanted to tell you directly that I will respect your role as her primary parent without reservation. My visitation rights exist to serve her needs, not mine, and I will approach them with that understanding going forward. Michael." I read the letter twice, searching for the manipulation hidden between its lines, the subtle blame shifting I'd come to expect from any communication with my ex-husband. Finding none, I felt something unexpected, not forgiveness, but a loosening of the knot of anger I'd carried for so long. "Is it from Michael?" Martha asked, noting the stationery I recognized from her own collection. She must have given it to him. I nodded, passing her the letter. "Did you know about this?" "Not the specifics," she said, skimming the text. "But he's been talking to us more regularly. George thinks the therapy might be genuine this time." "Do you believe people can really change that fundamentally?" I asked, genuinely curious about her perspective after 48 years of marriage and raising 3 children. Martha considered the question carefully. I believe people can grow to recognize and manage their worst impulses, given sufficient motivation and professional help. Whether that constitutes fundamental change. She shrugged. Perhaps it's less about changing who they are, and more about choosing which aspects of themselves they nurture. Her wisdom, as always, cut through my confusion to the heart of the matter. Michael might indeed be confronting his demons, might genuinely regret his actions. That possibility didn't obligate me to forgive him or welcome him back into my inner circle. It simply meant Lily might eventually have a healthier relationship with her father than I dared hope. Later that night, after the birthday celebrations had ended and Lily slept surrounded by new toys, I opened my laptop to work on my next column. The working title had been Moving Beyond Betrayal, but it suddenly felt inadequate, too focused on the past rather than the future I was building. I deleted it and typed instead. When time runs out on old stories, finding your voice after silencing trauma. As my fingers moved across the keyboard, I realized that the clock that had once seemed to be counting down to my breaking point was now measuring something else entirely. The distance between who I had been and who I was becoming. Between a woman defined by what was done to her and one defined by how she had risen. The traumatic discovery in that delivery room would always be part of my story. The betrayal by my husband and sister would always inform certain aspects of how I moved through the world, how I approached trust and vulnerability. But those experiences no longer contained or controlled me. Time had indeed run out, not on my mental health or my capacity to endure, but on the chapter of my life where those betrayals were the central plot, rather than merely the inciting incident in a much longer, richer narrative. And that narrative, I was discovering page by page, belonged entirely to me.